You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome to Inspiring Leaders. I'm Donna Chandler Newman, your host for our show, and thank you for watching our program. Please note that because of the continued challenges of COVID, we're still practicing responsible social distancing on our set. So our guests are remote, and our on-set personnel in the studio with me are vaccinated and masked. Now, on to our show. Today, we're talking about hunger, its continued presence in our community, and particularly how COVID has made this already difficult issue so much worse. On our show, we'll meet leaders from the Mid-South Food Bank who've made it their mission to change lives by eliminating hunger and replacing it with hope. In this first segment of our show, we'll meet Kathy Pope, President and CEO of the Mid-South Food Bank. And in our second segment, we'll meet Rick James, Board Chair for the organization. Joining us now is Kathy Pope, President and CEO of the Mid-South Food Bank. Hello, Kathy.
Hi, Donna.
I am so glad you're with us today. Thank you so much for making time to join us.
I'm honored to be here, very thankful.
Well, I have some questions. Let's begin with who you are and where you came from. So first of all, how did you get to the Mid-South Food Bank, and tell us a little bit about your background?
Okay. I have an MBA in finance from Texas Christian University. Right out of undergrad, I moved to Texas, and I lived out there for 8 years. Came back to Middle Georgia. I got a master's of arts in political science. I raised 4 children in Macon, Georgia. I worked for Meals on Wheels there in Middle Georgia, Susan G. Komen Foundation. And then I took a job in Mobile, Alabama at Feeding the Gulf Coast. That was my first food bank. And served South Alabama, South Mississippi, and the Panhandle of Florida. And then I was there 3 years. And then 2 years ago, I was recruited to come to Mid-South Food Bank in Memphis.
Well, we are delighted to have you, and especially with the level of experience that you have, that you've brought to us, and we're glad for that. Tell me this, if I were to put it in a nutshell, what is the mission of the food bank?
It literally is to change lives by eliminating hunger in the Mid-South. So we have our own service area that we serve, all 200 food banks in the country that are affiliated with Feeding America cover a particular area. So our area that we are responsible for feeding the people in need in 18 North Mississippi counties, 12 in West Tennessee, and Crittenton, Arkansas, across the river. So our job is to feed our community, those in need.
Okay. You talked a moment ago about the area that you serve, which, by the way, is enormous. I really didn't realize there was that much of northern Mississippi. There are two terms that I've heard in relationship to hunger, and they are food insecurity and food desert. What do those two terms mean exactly?
Well, food insecurity means that you do not have adequate access to healthy food to live a healthy lifestyle. There are times that you're eating less than 3 meals a day because your budget just will not stretch for your family to have 3 meals. So food insecurity is you do not have adequate food to live a healthy lifestyle. And then a food desert is we have areas in our community that don't have access to food through one of our partner agencies, of which we have 300 partner agencies. So if you were hungry in Tate County, Mississippi, for example, you would go to one of our partner agencies. That might be the church down the street or a nonprofit that provides clothing and food. So our job is to see that there is food in all of our communities by way of these partner agencies. There are some places in our community that don't have a partner agency. They don't have a grocery store where they can get fresh produce and healthy items. So those are our food deserts.
I gotcha. Well, you know, for me, that's like hard to believe, but I know I know that it is absolutely there. The other misnomer about the food bank is that I can drive up to the food bank and pick up food. And so you were just talking about the partner agencies. How did all this work, especially pre-COVID? Since I can't pull up and pick up food, how exactly did it work?
Well, prior to COVID, we would make sure that our 300 partner agencies had the food they need to serve their local community. For example, they may do one distribution a month and feed 50 families, or they may do 2 distributions a month and feed 300 families per distribution. So they order the food from us in the quantities that they need. They know what they need to serve their community. And then we deliver that food to them and they distribute it whenever their distribution is. Maybe their pantry's open all day, every day, or 9 to 2 days a week. So that's how our local what we call brick and mortar partner agencies work. Additionally, to try to feed those food deserts, we would take mobile distributions into communities that needed access to more food, and we were doing about 60 a month. That's not the workhorse of how we get food into our local communities. It's really our partner agencies.
Gotcha.
Pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, and then along comes COVID. So
Yes.
Everything has changed with that. The amount of food that you distribute, how you do it. Talk about that and what COVID has done and what new challenges you have.
I would love to. So prior to COVID, this food bank was serving about 16.7 million pounds a year, 16.7 million. We were doing about 60 mobile distributions and really depending on those partner agencies to distribute food to our local communities. Well, if you recall, when COVID hit and we went into Safer at Home, most of our agencies are run by seniors. So a lot of them went safer at home and closed their pantries. So we, of course, had to pivot and figure out how are we going to serve these people that we were already serving before, and now the people who are out of work because of business closings, et cetera. So we ramped up our mobile distributions. We got partners, new partners, serving new groups of people that we've not done a great job of serving before. And we went from 60 a month to about 220 a month. About almost 50% of our agencies closed. So that really has been our workhorse, Donna, to get the food out that we've gotten out. And in a 12-month period during COVID, we distributed 55 million pounds of food.
So good Lord, let me understand. 16.7 million pounds of food per year, and now 55 million. That's more than triple, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Our distributions, when we started doing mobile distributions, we would be set up and to serve 300 families. 500 would be in line. And, we would have to direct them to another mobile. So we just kind of kept ramping it up. We have a partner that is distributing to 1,000 households in one distribution. That's how many people are in need in our community.
And let's note, and, I'm sure it's like intuitively obvious, as one of my friends says. Honestly, of course, there's that many more people because there's that many people who are out of work and
Exactly.
And didn't you give me a statistic of how many people cannot sustain themselves month to month? Didn't you tell me that if somebody had a how much dollar emergency, what did you say?
Well, there has been a study recently that says that 40% of us cannot withstand an emergency bill of $400. That emergency bill, whether it's a health problem, a car breakdown, or whatever, that will send us into not being able to pay our bills and buy food and pay for medicine. 40% of us. And I think that speaks to how so many of us just live week to week, paycheck to paycheck, and cannot withstand the business shutdown, the layoff, which is what we've seen during COVID.
And so COVID has complicated everybody's lives on so many levels. That's true.
Yes.
It really
Yes.
has. Well, one of the other things you were talking about a minute ago is northern Mississippi. If I'm not mistaken, you've had a development in northern Mississippi recently. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, when I got here in August of 2019, and I kind of did my assessment of the area, and my board wanted to kind of know what I thought. One of the things I said was we have to have additional resources for food coming in the door. There's not enough food to feed the need, and that was pre-COVID. And I wanted a Mississippi warehouse. We've never had a brick and mortar warehouse in North Mississippi, and that kind of shut us out of some USDA commodities that we depend on in Tennessee. So the board was so gracious and just walked out on trust with me. And right when COVID hit, my COO and I went into North Mississippi and we found a warehouse. So we leased a warehouse in April, right when the pandemic hit, and started with that. Really allowed us to serve North Mississippi a lot better because we were able to get that product into Mississippi. And then we started working on getting the USDA, it's called TFAP, but it's a contract that you have with a state agency in each of the states, which we have in Tennessee. So we started working on that immediately to get that contract, because that was going to allow us about 3 times the amount of food that we were going to be able to put into North Mississippi. I'm so happy to report that we signed that contract in June, and it was effective July 1 of this year. So wow. We're just so happy about that and what that's going to do to help us serve those in North Mississippi that need us.
That is amazing and a godsend, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
One of the other things that we talked about is the difference between getting food and getting funds. I know a lot of us give at church cans of food, etc., and a lot of us also give money. Tell me, what is the difference between, though I know you appreciate both, which is better for you?
Well, and we do appreciate both. We love the food drives. We've missed that, during COVID, because that really brings a lot of awareness to the need in our community. So we so appreciate that. But we can just stretch $1 a lot more, because we are buying large quantities of food, a whole 53-foot truckload of green beans, for example. So we can provide a can of green beans a lot cheaper than someone could buy the green beans and get them to the food bank. Again, we love it, but we can stretch your $10 to provide 30 meals, because we're coming up with all these different resources for food. USDA commodities. We're in the communities every day picking up from grocery stores that have pulled items that are close to best if used by date. Can might be slightly dented. Produce needs to be getting out the door pretty quickly, right? So they're pulling things. We're picking all of that stuff up, using our volunteers, of course, to go through for food safety. Mm-hmm. And we're getting food just from all over. National manufacturers are donating food. We're getting food from farmers. So we're able to collectively gather all of that.
Oh, excuse me. So I know that you're grateful for that then, but if I'm going to the store and buying a sack of cans, it'd be better for all of us if I'd give you my $20 or whatever, right?
That's right.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. Okay, I will amend my ways. Thank you. Thank you so much for the information. Awareness is a huge deal for all of us. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the great work that you do for the food bank. We're now going to go and talk with your board chair, Rick James, and we thank you so much for your time and for all the wonderful work you do for our community.
Well, thank you. It's a precious community to be serving in.
Thank you very much. We're going to pause now for a short break. When we return, we'll be joined by Rick James, Board Chair for the Mid-South Food Bank.
GHS-TV started in 1982, and it was just a couple of cameras, a couple of on-air personality, and it's really grown into what you see today. It's a multi-million-dollar studio with top-of-the-line technology.
Being able to operate, all of the machinery in the control room, being able to use all of our software and hardware that we have around the studio, is a great skill because this is top-of-the-line equipment.
I feel like this class has brightened my horizon. It's something that I never thought I would be doing, especially as a student.
GHS-TV is probably one of the most hands-on experiences a student will ever get in their lifetime.
Welcome back to Crosstalk. Nothing really has just the vibe that we have here.
Especially after you finish, you get a real rush of, wow, I just did that.
By the time a student graduates from Germantown High School, they will know pretty much every position there is, from producing to directing to on-air work.
You learn time management, you learn organization, you learn how to work with people, how to better communicate with people.
We put a lot on them, and they have to be able to have the responsibility and the knowledge to get everything that we ask them.
I had very little experience, so in the past 3 years, the skills that I've learned have absolutely exponentially grown.
The class has actually helped me figure out that I want to go to college for journalism.
When a student graduates, they are the best possible version of themselves that they can be.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit ghskappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back. I'm Donna Chandler Newman, and you're watching Inspiring Leaders. Today, we're talking with leaders from the Mid-South Food Bank. We're delighted to be joined now by Board Chair Rick James. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate the invitation.
We're so glad that you're with us today, and thank you for being here. You know, you're a busy man. You are the owner and the president of Retail Castle Group. You have High Point Grocery and 3 Cash Savers, and you're still growing as a chain. And so we appreciate you taking your time with us. And most particularly, I'm curious about why you spend so much time with the food bank. Why is that important to you?
Well, being in the food industry and being around it every day, you recognize what abundant quantity and what great quality of food that we have in this country. I just passed my 50-year anniversary in the business. I started as a 15-year-old bagging groceries, and after college went into management of stores and on into supervision and so forth. And so I've always been around food, and we've always seen kind of this abundant supply. And then at the same time, we'd see people that didn't have access to nutritional food on an everyday basis. And it's always just kind of struck me as we got to do something about that. So throughout my career, I've tried, it's been my primary philanthropic effort is to help the food bank or whatever the food program was wherever I was at.
Well, I'm really glad for that, and I know that the food bank is happy about it too. You've been on their board twice now, haven't you?
I have. I kind of got started back in the early 90s. Mayor Dick Hackett had developed a program along with the food bank called Roundup. And it was kind of a two-pronged approach. One was you could go into a grocery store and, if you bought $19.50 worth of groceries, you could round it up to $20, and then the store would accumulate that money and donate it on your behalf to the food bank. And then also there was a program where food, whether it was at a grocery store or whether it was at a convention, and there was food that was ready, hadn't been served, that could be taken to an agency immediately, that would be donated to the food bank. So that's kind of how I got started. I got involved with the food bank at that point, served on the board for about 8 years during the 90s, and came off of the board, and then I guess it was probably back in 2014 that I came back on the board for a second tour of duty.
Well, I know they're glad to have you. Rick, in our last segment with Kathy, I'd asked her about food insecurity and food deserts and what they were, and she described them in fairly good detail. But what I didn't ask her was, tell me about the face of hunger. Who are we feeding? Well,
sometimes that question has lots of different answers, and what we kind of typically go to is I think we look at a homeless person and we expect that's who is being served by food banks and food kitchens, pantries around the city, through churches and through organizations. But that's not as broad a cast view as it really is. Children in this city are more food insecure than anywhere else in the country. 1 in 4 children in this city do not know where their next meal is coming from. Seniors in this city are far greater than the national average as far as being hungry and not having access to nutritional food. And that's one that really kind of struck home with me. I told you I started very young in the food business, and my parents had no problems feeding me and my sisters or themselves. But I watched as they got older, and after my dad retired, they were into their elderly years, that the amount of prescriptions, the amount of medication that a senior needs ends up becoming a focal point of a decision of, do I eat today or do I fill my prescription?
Wow.
Now, my parents were able to answer that question pretty easy, but there are seniors in this city that right now today are deciding whether or not to have their high blood pressure medicine filled or to eat. And that's unfortunate. So the face of hunger is much different than sometimes we think. It's working adults. Sometimes you've got a working family. They're working. They're trying to provide for their family, and they're above a line in the poverty structure, or that safety net structure. They're above that line, so they don't get that extra assistance, but they don't have enough to feed their whole family. And one of the things that we kind of have to remember too is, and you talked about food deserts, and I operate a few stores that are within areas that without us would be food deserts. I'll talk to folks and they'll say, oh, but there's lots of little stores around. But stores that carry produce, stores that carry poultry, fish, meat, nutritional foods that meet the nutritional development needs of a family are in some areas of this city are missing. So, that's what the food bank does. I've told people the food bank stands in that gap of where people aren't getting help someplace else. And there's a lot of great help that's provided by the county, the city, by the federal government, but there are people that fall into the cracks, and the food bank is there along with our agencies to help those folks.
Well, and particularly now with COVID has complicated everything. As Kathy was telling us, you have so many more people who need food, so many more pounds of food being served. You also, though, and you are a volunteer, you also need lots of volunteers. Talk about what volunteers do for the food bank.
Well, there's lots of ways to engage with the food bank and be a volunteer. And I talk to people who work for us in our business and talk about having a passion for what you do on a daily basis. And I feel the same way about nonprofits. There are so many great nonprofits in this city, and so many wonderful people who donate their time and their talent and their treasure toward the nonprofits. And so I tell people there's plenty of opportunities. You just find what you have a passion for. So if you have a passion for, if you have a passion for kids, then you can volunteer and help pack backpacks that will go home with kids on the weekend after school. If you have a passion for seniors, then that's a way that you can help as well. One program that's not food actually related that I think is really cool at the food bank is their diaper program. Having raised 5 kids myself, diapers are expensive. And so you take a low income family that's already struggling to get by, already struggling to pay their rent, to feed their family. And now they've got, $80 worth of diapers with a newborn. And so there's a diaper program. So if you have a passion for young families, young women that have children, then that's how you can get involved. You can get involved at your work. You can do food donations and do food rallies at your church. And then one that we just recently had that I thought was the coolest thing was our mobile pantry that we did on the grounds of the Liberty Bowl. It was a citywide event. We've done these mobile pantries around the city, but if you do one in Fraser, maybe somebody in the southeast part of the county can't really get there. So we found a central location with lots of space, and there were like 4,800 families that were fed that day with fresh produce, with fresh meat, with groceries, and it was an incredible event. And really an uplifting event for the volunteers, for the staff, and certainly for those clients that benefit from it. So there's lots of ways that you can engage with the food bank and feel fulfilled.
So you should, let's mention the website, midsouthfoodbank.org, right? So that's one way to find out what's there. You can call, and if you want to volunteer, I'm sure they welcome your call. What else do you welcome from the community? I know you need volunteers. What else do you need?
Well, we need donations. The very, very best donation that you can make, probably to any organization, but certainly at the food bank, is cash. We're not going to turn down, any food donation whatsoever, but cash turns into because of the food bank's ability to purchase food and to distribute it to the agencies. $1 equals 3 meals. So because of the efficiency of the food bank and the way it operates, they can take $1 and they can feed 3 meals with that. And that's because they're purchasing from manufacturers. A lot of manufacturers, food manufacturers in the country, have got programs that they work along with Feeding America and local food banks where at a discounted rate, even lower than I can buy as a grocer, that they'll make that food available to food banks so it can be given to folks.
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll take note of that. So we need volunteers, but we need cash. And to tell you the truth, very well, when I think about where you donate, the food bank is vital for someone to survive. And so that's hitting close to home for many of us. That's good. Thank you so much for all that you do for the food bank. When I listen to you and to Kathy, the passion in your voices inspires me to move forward, and I know it's inspired our audience. So thank you so much. I appreciate you being here, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next Liberty Bowl donation.
Great. Thank you very much.
And thank you for being with us today for Inspiring Leaders. We appreciate our guests on today's show, Kathy Pope and Rick James, both representing the Mid-South Food Bank. Now, through our discussion today, I believe we've learned that hunger is absolutely real in the Mid-South and that our help is essential. So if you'd like to get involved in the fight to end hunger in our community by volunteering or donating, then you can visit their website, midsouthfoodbank.org. Thank you once more for watching our show. If you're interested in the dates of Inspiring Leaders or for our station's complete programming guide, you can visit GHS-TV.org, where we're streaming live 24 hours a day. You can keep up with GHS-TV by visiting our website. We hope you'll like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Thank you for joining us, and be sure to join us and watch us again next month as we present more Inspiring Leaders.